Welcome back to the channel, family. So glad to see you. I have another video here. This topic is going to be a little different, but it's definitely in line with what we do here on this channel, which is aiming to build community. This is more in line with a little bit of what we do on Sunday afternoons in our Sunday sessions. And so I wanted to bring some of that conversation here. Now, before we jump into this, of course, as usual, make sure that you like the video, subscribe to the channel, consider joining our community, whether you do that on Patreon, the YouTube membership program. Also, you can join us on Discord. Check out our Sunday sessions for the link to the Discord. It's in the description there. We're also looking for volunteers, and we're looking for volunteers on two levels: either content volunteers, and which means you want to volunteer for the channel. That means you want to help us make this channel as awesome as it can be. I just recently dropped a video on the historical tyranny of Christianity, and it was about an hour-long video that could have really used some production quality, so we're and not just stuff like that, but also moderators, chat stuff, platforms. We have Patreon, Discord, and things of that we need help in. But then also you may consider volunteering on the community side, which means, no, I want to help build community. That could be something as simple as hosting a game night, or it could be something as working with our Sunday sessions, whether it be in the chat, whether it be in one of our Discord rooms, as people are coming in and doing all different types of things. So we have a slew of opportunities. How you find out about those opportunities is, of course, by watching these videos, because I'm always going to talk about them. But then also on our website, dldd.us, that's dldd.us, dldd.us, because that's us, DL and DD. I'm DL, my wife is DD. But you can go to that website to volunteer and to learn more about the volunteer opportunities for the channel. And for those of you who want to volunteer on the community aspect of things, and it's kind of the same type of roles, there's just probably more roles on the community side. But if you want to get involved in that, go to any of our recent Sunday sessions videos and just go to the descriptions, and you will find a slew of forms that you can engage to get in contact with us and let us know what you want to do. All right, so I think I've said everything. Oh, there's merch. Y'all know about the merch, right? Like, we have dope merch. Now that I'm doing some of these videos stand up, I definitely got to get some merch so I can kind of show it off a little bit. But the topic of this video is, if you didn't get it from the title, is basically what are some of the biggest barriers to building secular community? And as I've said with many of my videos, this is not my attempt to give an exhaustive list, nor is this my even attempt to make myself an authority on this subject. These are just some things that I've noticed. We've actually had a little bit of conversation about this in our Discord. These are some surveys that I've been shopping around for a while just to kind of feel some things out, and then some of this stuff comes from observational methods as well, which, as we all can know, can be very subjective. But I'll advise you right now, the majority of the content on my channel as of now is highly subjective, because I am not trying to convince anyone, nor am I necessarily making claims. I'm really just sharing my thoughts and kind of unpacking after 10 years of living in the closet as an atheist. And so this is, this year has been the first time I've been able to publicly have these conversations internally without being afraid of backlash. Not saying that the backlash hasn't come, just not afraid of it. Doesn't bother me, not in one sense. As a matter of fact, I'm thinking about doing, this is a silly little rabbit trail, but I am thinking about doing a segment on the channel. I don't know. I think I want to call it something like Christians talking to themselves again. I don't know, something like that, where I'm just going to take particular comments where Christians who I've made it very clear to that I have no interest talking to you or engaging you in a conversation at all, and that I'm just going to give algorithmic responses from here on out. And they just keep talking. I just keep responding, poor fella, poor fella, poor fella. And I'm playing with that. So I might do that. I might do that. Y'all be on the lookout for it. And let me know what you think about that in the comments. Okay, so let's jump into this conversation. Today we're talking about what are some of the things that I've seen that I think are barriers to building secular community, some of the things that I think that people run into And so we'll just kind of jump right into it. The first one that I've seen, and again, if this is not you, don't be like, oh no, we're not like that, you know. And instead say, do I know anybody who actually fits that category? And it's not even if I know anybody who fits that category. Is this an actual barrier? And is this one of the things that may be making it a little more difficult to build community among secular folks? So I'm gonna start with one. You ready? Please don't hate me after this. No, this shouldn't be too bad. The first one though is just the apathy of non-believers, right? We don't care about community. Sometimes we don't. I think for some of us, once, especially for those of us who were faithfully involved, I think it's kind of a bittersweet thing. On one end, we do miss the community, but on the other end, it's like, man, it feels so good to have my Sundays back. But then for the pastor, it's not just Sundays; it's your Sundays, it's your Wednesdays, it's your Thursdays if you have practices, it's your Mondays if you're organized and you have weekly debriefs and reviews because technically the top of your week is Sunday. So Monday morning, we need to talk about everything that happened the previous week. And so sometimes it just feels good to debrief. And let's just be honest, what we typically tend to do, and again, this doesn't speak for everybody. This is just my perspective, my context. I am not saying that everybody's listening will fit this. And that's one of the things that I've definitely appreciated about many of my subscribers is that you recognize that I'm trying to bring nuance to this conversation, as I recognize that other people have varying different experiences from mine. I'm just bringing some of my experiences to the table. So one of the things that I think happens a lot of time is that when you leave the faith, when you leave religion, when you leave superstition, you tend to put everything that was a part of the package into the same category. And so it's just like, nope, I don't want to do anything that looks like that or feels like that anymore because that just felt too much like control. And and honestly, in this, I think this is the point that I'm really thinking about. It's more so you begin to think, no, the reason we came together, the only reason we came together was because of our superstition, or the only reason that we came together was because of this religion, right? And so then it becomes so I shouldn't care about those things. And that is a sad thing because church did become such a vocal advocate of people coming together and do not forsake the assembly of yourselves together, that sometimes when people leave, that message still sounds like a church message. So, or it sounds like a religious message. So when you're saying, hey, maybe we should be getting together sometimes, and we're like, I don't think we should be doing that because it's just type of a built-in apathy. They often see their secular beliefs as a very personal stance, which they are, rather than a social or communal identity, which reduces their motivation to participate in organized activities. And I think saying that brings up a good point that we should address, that your secular ideas and your stance as an atheist is innately personal, and these things are innately are incredibly individual. Just like typically there are no two Christians who really believe the same things, no two atheists by default share the same worldview, but we don't have to engage a type of community that forces everybody to have the same worldview. We don't have to engage a type of community that even requires that. And yes, while this is a personal stance, and there is nothing about us being atheists that requires us to come together or even urges us to come together in any type of way. But for those of us who are not just atheists but who are also humanists, then at least for those of us, we can recognize that there is actually a need for people to come together, and for lack of better words, fellowship. And that can look like whatever you want it to look like. And that's one of the things we did great detail, or we went through and talked through in great detail in our very first Sunday session series, which was basically called the Thesis of Secular Community. If you have not checked that out yet, I encourage you to go and actually listen through those conversations as I have a sneaky suspicion that they'll be immensely helpful to breaking some of the stereotypes of community. So yes, while as atheists, there's nothing that inherently draws us to have to build community. I think as humanists, we should be highly concerned for the amount of people who are deconverting and deconstructing without a safe place to land. And then also for people who are trying to figure things out and could really benefit from having a group of people around them who are not punishing them for thinking things differently, and while at the same time are providing some type of safeguards for them. So, um, because they often see their secular beliefs as personal stance rather than social or communal identity, this reduces their motivation to participate in organized activities. And so some of the challenges that this causes is a lack of engagement, of course. So many non-believers do not see the value in joining a community, which typically leads to low participation rates. This is one of the reasons that I am very passionate about building secular community. And I know my little experiment that my wife and I and some other folk are kind of doing right now, it looks different than what other people are doing. But one of the reasons I'm passionate about doing this and encouraging other people to do the same in whatever ways kind of feel organic to them is because right now it is a struggle. Non-believer organizations do have somewhat of a struggle getting their memberships up and things of that nature. And some of them do just like excellent work that needs to be supported. And so one of the ways that we out here in the field can support those existing organizations is by building community around us, wherewith we create space for those organizations to kind of live and thrive and offer their resources. For example, as we start more bridge affiliated communities and more communities that are a part of the Bridge City Global family, that'll be one of our major goals, is making sure that every time we have space, that we are creating space for Black non-believer chapters, for recovering from religion chapters, and that we are making those spaces a repository of information for all of those secular resources out there that exist. And a better way to say that is just all of those human resources out there that exist. And even in the current series we're in on Sunday sessions, we're talking about how to human. And we're just having a conversation with the chat, engaging everybody live. Those are some of the things that it's helping us to kind of realize, unpack, and uncover that community is more than just coming together and singing together. And community is more than just coming together and eating and drinking together. Community is literally how we find a way to be valuable and viable towards our own solutions without the need for anybody else. Building community where we are, and forgive me if I'm preaching a little bit, is how people go from scarcity to sovereignty. That's good stuff. Okay, let's continue. So there'll be a lack of engagement, low participation rates, and then it's just this individualism thing, which I am not against in any shape, form, or fashion. I believe communities are best, are most innovative when they do not cancel out people's ability to be individuals. But secular individuals primarily will prioritize personal autonomy and individualism over communal activities. And to me, I don't think that that's a barrier that can't be crossed. I've spent enough time building and working with community organizations to realize that there's actually a really easy way to strike that balance, but we have to be intentional about it. A lot of the things that have not happened in communities, secular or otherwise, have not happened because people have not intentionally sat at the table and thought through the variables. Those are one of the things that I do feel that I am uniquely passionate about bringing to the table, is because I have sat down and thought through some of these variables, not all of them. I am desperately anxious to have other people at the table with me, because we all bring so many different things, right? So, um, one of the things that I do like to do is to emphasize the personal and social benefits of community involvement, such as support networks, social activities, and advocacy opportunities. Anybody out there who's trying to advocate for anything or anybody out there who's trying to be an activist, who's trying to get involved in community activism, then you need a community to support that. So why not build it, right? And then the, I think our goal should be to design community activities that cater to diverse interest and make it easy for newcomers to participate without feeling pressured. And honestly, I don't know what's taking the secular community so long to really get in on building community, because I think once we do, we'll do community better than religion ever did. I think, and I when I say that, I'm not saying that in any type of overly idealistic way where I think things that humans do won't happen, in secular communities. I'm sure it will. I don't have those type of illusions about life as of yet. But that we can release the pretense, reduce the pretense, and I think that will make a major difference. All right, so that was the first one, just the apathy of non-believers, and I hope I added enough nuance to that, not to just say it's not that non-believers don't care, it's just that if you spent your whole life a part of this idea that community equals conversion, or community equals uniformity, or that community equals evangelizing other people, then the idea of community still has a lot of baggage for those. And so I think for some people, that's where some of that apathy comes from. But another one, which is probably just as common, maybe even more, is the fear of looking like church, right? Many non-believers are wary of organized communities resembling religious institutions. And I'm one of those people who's actually thankful that we have more of those. We have Sunday Assembly, we have Oasis that's out there. Of course, we've had Universal Unitarianism. I can't say it right. We've had those for a long time. I'm actually grateful that we have places like that. I think I like the Sunday Assemblies and the Oasis a little more than the Universalism limits. And I'm not hating on those. I love it. It's all good. Yeah. But I do like the Oasis and Secular Assembly because they are a little more humanist, or well, that's not a good way to say that. They're a little less spiritual, or a little less supernatural, or a little less superstitious. Now, I think what I'm trying to build will still look a little bit different than them, but back to the point, we have organizations that are already out there, and yes, sometimes it does look like church, and people fear that adopting structures similar to churches might lead to dogmatism, hierarchical leadership, or ritualistic practices that they have consciously rejected. And I understand that fear. It is a substantiated fear, but I will say that is a fear that is from the position of non-participation. In other words, that fear is, I'm going to be a part of something that I'm not going to be participating in. Therefore, it will become something that I don't want it to be. Because if you actually have this thought from the posture of participation, then it becomes, if I'm going to be a part of something that's healthy for people, then I'm going to play my part to make sure that it doesn't lead to dogmatism, hierarchical leadership, or ritualistic practices. As I often try to remind people that religions are not inherently anything, community is not inherently anything. Anything that happens that impacts humanity happens because of both the activity of some humans and the inactivity of others. So even churches that are out there and that are absolutely just doing the most heinous and horrendous things, these things are happening because of the activity of the people who are doing those things and the inactivity of the people who are around those things, and not, kind of exercising their own autonomy and agency to make a difference. So what I would say to those people who have that fear is just don't let the idea of church rob you of your autonomy. Church is not the only thing that looks like church. Conferences look like churches. Events, concerts look like churches. In many cases, schools look like churches, especially when you get into higher education. Also, courts. they do look like churches, and I will agree there's quite a bit of dogmatism and hierarchical leadership there. But the big point is people are in control of the institutions that people create. So you can build a community that maybe looks like a church in some ways and has nothing to do with the church in many ways. As a matter of fact, you won't be hard pressed to find some churches that aren't already doing that. But secular individuals often associate structured gatherings with negative experiences from their religious past, which should be understandable. And then there's a strong aversion to rituals and ceremonies that, resemble religious practices. And the things that I would say about that is that if you're building community, don't do those things. And I think again, that's the thing about the variety of community, which is why I'm one of those people who urge that we should be building as many communities as possible so that there's something out there a little bit for everybody. Some people are going to want a little bit of woo with their humanism. Let them build communities around that. Some people won't know woo at all. I'm a little less woo, right? So some people are going to want no woo woo at all. Build communities for those people. And for those people, like, don't do the rituals, don't do the ceremonies. And what's funny is that's not like a new thing. You wouldn't even be being innovative at that moment. There are several churches who do not do any of the rituals. There are several churches that do not do baptisms. There are several churches of those same churches that do not do communion. They don't even do ordinations. So, that's nothing new. I kind of consider that existence, more that resistance more so trapped in the religious trauma than it actually is in substantiated or even critical engaging with the issue, because churches don't do anything that's unique from other people activity. And so saying, oh, to me, it was just as defunct when people who were part of churches would be like, oh, this church operates like a business. And when they described typically in what way, it was things that you'd actually want that church to do. And it's like, no, this is called being fiscally responsible. And you'd actually want them to do that as a nonprofit organization. But anyway, um, but ways that you can overcome this for those of you who are building community is ensure that the community explicitly differentiates itself from religious organizations and its mission, values, and practices. Again, I mentioned Sunday Assembly and Oasis earlier because they very much operate like church. It's in the name, Sunday Assembly and Oasis. I think I've actually preached at a church called Oasis before. But definitely sounds like a church, looks like what you would think is a church, or you could have thought you were, I don't know. But they have Sunday sessions. They normally have a talk. There's normally music. It's secular music. Their music is weird, though. I'm gonna be honest. I don't think they have a good music strategy yet. But I'm definitely more than open to help with that. But yeah, but they do the music and stuff, but they do go take that extra effort to let people know, hey, we don't have any dogma, we don't have any doctrine, we don't have any deities here. These are just people coming together. We're learning about things together and all of those different types of things. So, and then you can focus on principles such as rationality, evidence-based discussion, and personal freedom to reassure members that community is secular in nature. Um, and that's such a powerful statement, that community is secular. It's a people thing. It's a human thing. It has nothing to do with some, you know, big guy upstairs. Um, so I've hit that one. Third one, lack of volunteers, right? You can't build anything without volunteers. Building and maintaining a community requires active participation and volunteerism. However, many secular communities struggle with a shortage of volunteers willing to take on leadership roles or contribute their time and skills. And unfortunately, like, um, people in the secular community, you're definitely going to have to realize, like, this is kind of like, it's like pioneering, right? We need more and more and more people to step up to the bat, and more people to step up to the front or to the center, or however you say it, or however you see it. I typically like saying to the center. Come to the center, get in the middle of the wheel, and help move things around. But it's kind of hard to find those things. And some of those challenges that take in place is many people have already been impacted by volunteer burnout before they deconverted or deconstructed. So by the time they get on this side, the last thing they want to do is to get back involved in something that is going to wear them out. But one of the things that I like to kind of highlight to people is that there are severe differences between volunteering for a secular organization versus volunteering for a superstitious organization. One of those big differences is that when you're volunteering for a superstitious organization, many things are not defined, such as your time commitment, your duties, your descriptions. A lot of times these things are not defined, and even worse, these things can be taken advantage of because you believe that God is going to reward you or that your pastor is going to put in a good word for you with the big guy upstairs. But in a secular community, you don't have to worry about any of those things, or you shouldn't. Shouldn't have to worry about any of those things. And I urge anybody who's building secular communities and building and attracting volunteers to actually create time commitments for those volunteers so that everything is clear and that you're protecting the people who are helping you against burnout. And there are ways to do that. As I stated earlier, it's just about coming to the table and being intentional about what you're trying to build, why you're trying to build it, and making sure that you're prioritizing people throughout the entire process. So like for us, everything that we do with the Bridge and Bridge City Global, it is progressive thinking, people-centric, and life-affirming, which means we want people to be able to live their lives, right? That's the whole point of doing it. And then, of course, potential volunteers may have other commitments, such as work, family, or personal interests that take precedence. And again, I think people who've experienced from the church, who have experience from the church, are used to people telling them, "No, you got to prioritize this over everything, or you're not faithful." I think secular communities can do a great job of counterbalancing a lot of that virility in creating healthier ways for people to volunteer that does not require them to give up their lives. And again, that's the whole point about being life affirming. And so one of the things that I encourage is to implement programs to recognize and reward volunteers for their contributions, and then offer flexible volunteering opportunities that can accommodate different schedules and levels of commitment. And so that's kind of one of the things we do with the Bridge and Bridge City Global is that we give people the options. Do you want to volunteer at a supporter level, a member level, a promoter level, or an organizer level? And like a supporter level, that's less than 5 hours a week. Member level, that's maybe 5 to 10 hours a week. Promoter level, that's 10 to 15 hours a week. If you're at organizer level, then you're typically volunteering 20 plus hours a week. But that's how we kind of gauge that. And even for those who want to volunteer at the organizer level, we work with them to figure out, okay, what does that mean? How much past 20 can you handle without jeopardizing or bringing harm to your life? One of the things that I'm really big about, even in my professional life at work, is honoring other people's bandwidth, which is really important. All right. And so this last one that I want to hit before we wrap up this video is some people just simply don't know where to start. And that's definitely one of the reasons that we're doing the Sunday sessions on Sundays, so that we can kind of model community a little bit and model this idea that there is not a blueprint. There may be some frameworks that you can follow, but there is not a blueprint. Communities are defined by the DNA of the people who are involved with those communities, and healthy communities evolve with the amount of people who are involved. So many non-believers who are interested in forming or joining a secular community simply don't know where to begin. They may lack resources, guidance, or connection to others who share this interest, which is why it's important for those of us who are promoters of secular community and those of us who are building secular community to be vocal, to be the midget on the mountain, to let other people know, yes, we are out here. That's one of the ways we can reverse some of these trends. There's often a lack of readily available information on how to start and sustain a secular community, which is one of the things that I am in the game to change. That's what Sunday sessions are for. Again, if you're trying to build secular community, please go check out our Thesis of Secular Community series on our Sunday sessions. I think there's like five. I think we did like 5 episodes where we talked through this. And then isolation is also a big issue. Potential community builders may feel isolated and unsure if there is enough local interest to support a community. And the truth of the matter is, there may not be yet. There may not be enough local interest because people don't even know it's an option for them to be interested in yet. And so sometimes you have to make that a viable option for them. Now, I'm not saying just go out and get on the corner and preach. I don't know what you preach, but but I am saying that, if you can't build community locally, start building community online, start building community with other people, across the internet. And you'd be surprised who ends up being your next door neighbor, whether that neighbor is a town away, a house away, a city away, whatever. But the more you become aware of other people, the more you get comfortable sharing some of these things about critical thinking, science, mathematics, whatever, because literally that's another big thing, a big difference between superstitious communities and secular communities, is that secular communities' conversations don't have to be limited. This is one of the beauties of not having doctrine and dogma, is that our conversations don't have to be limited to dogma. We can talk about almost anything. I know next week, not next week, but the next session we're doing in Sunday sessions after we get out of How to Human is going to be Please Don't Stop the Music, which is trying to find a way to harmonize your life in the midst of chaos. And we're all going to be learning from each other, because that's what community does. But potential community, I think I said the isolation part. One of the things that we're going to be doing to help a lot in this area is we'll be creating and distributing guides, toolkits, and other resources that provide step-by-step instructions on forming secular communities and cultivating them, building them, and accelerating them into innovative ecosystems, which is ultimately what I like to see things becoming. I think we used to call them ICE back in the day, innovative community ecosystems, which I think we're desperately in need of. And then we'll also be facilitating networking opportunities through online forums, social media, and regional meetups to connect like-minded individuals so that, again, we can accelerate the development of community. Building secular community involves overcoming significant barriers, such as some of the ones I've mentioned here: apathy, fear, religious resemblance, lack of volunteers, and uncertainty about when, where, or how to start, right? But by understanding these challenges and implementing targeted strategies, secular communities can create inclusive, supportive, and engaging environments that cater to the needs of non-believers and go beyond that ultimately. I think when we do secular community correctly, it won't just be valuable for non-believers, but it will be equally just as valuable for believers as well. So that's why I kind of share some of these things. But that brings me to the end of this conversation. I hope that I've said something that is of value for you. And I'd be very interested in hearing, what are some of your thoughts about barriers to secular community building? What do you think is slowing down this process, and how do you think we can all lend a hand to making sure that there is more community out there globally? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Again, if you haven't liked the video already, go ahead and do that. Subscribe to the channel. Consider joining our community. Consider volunteering. Check out our merch. I think I said everything that I needed to say. So until next time, keep rising, stay progressive, and stay beautiful if you can. I'll holla.